I couldn't open my eyes. The lids felt as heavy as lead, and my entire body burned with a dull, aching fire. The only thing tethering me to the world was the rhythmic, annoying beeping of the machine next to my bed. "Is it done yet?" a male voice asked. It was cold, impatient, and devoid of any warmth. "Adrian, my husband." "Almost," a woman's voice answered, soft but sharp. "Her vitals are dropping fast. The doctor said it's just a matter of minutes now." Lila, my adopted sister. "My best friend." Finally, Adrian sighed. I heard the rustle of fabric like he was checking his watch. I thought she'd hold on forever. "Your slow-acting method took 6 months. Lila, we almost lost the merger because she wouldn't just die." "Stop complaining." Lila giggled. It was a chilling sound. If I had rushed it, the autopsy would have shown the arsenic. This way, it looks like natural organ failure. Poor sickly Elara. My heart clenched not from the pain ravaging my body, but from the ice spreading through my soul. "Arsenic? Did you get the transfer codes?" Lila asked. "Yesterday," Adrian scoffed. She signed everything over with a shaking hand. She thanked me for taking care of the company while she was sick. "She actually thanked me, Lila." They laughed. They were standing over my dying body, laughing. "She was always so naive," Lila said. "She thought we loved her. She never guessed that I was the one slipping the powder into her tea every morning. And she never guessed that you and I have been together since college," Adrian added. "Goodbye, Elara. Thanks for the billions." A hand touched my forehead. It wasn't gentle. It was mocking, rage. Pure, white-hot rage flooded my veins, overpowering the weakness. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear their eyes out. "You killed me. You stole everything. You made me thank you for my own murder." P-E-P, the sound became one long, continuous tone. My breath caught in my throat and didn't come back. "No, not like this," I screamed in the silence of my mind. "God, give me a chance. Let me make them pay." The darkness swallowed me whole. The laughter faded. There was nothing but the void. Gas. Air rushed into my lungs so hard it hurt. I sat up, clutching my chest, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. "No!" I shouted, swinging my arms to fight them off. But there was no one there. I wasn't in the sterile, cold hospital room. I was sitting in a soft bed with silk sheets. Sunlight streamed through the curtains-worn, golden sunlight, not the harsh fluorescent glare of the ICU. "What?" I looked at my hands. They weren't withered and pale. They were smooth, healthy. The 4 bruises were gone. The pain was gone. I scrambled out of bed, my legs steady and strong, and ran to the full-length mirror in the corner. The face staring back at me wasn't the gaunt, dying woman of 26. It was me at 21. My cheeks were full, my eyes bright, my hair long and shiny. I grabbed the digital calendar on the desk. October 14th, 2020. My knees gave out and I sank to the floor. Today. This was the day. "Miss Elara?" A knock on the door made me jump. "Who is it?" My voice didn't sound weak. It sounded strong, commanding. "It's Sarah," the maid called out through the wood. "Mr. Adrian is downstairs. He's here for the engagement party rehearsal. He brought Miss Lila with him." Adrian. Lila. The names didn't bring love anymore. They brought the taste of blood to my mouth. I stood up slowly, gripping the edge of the dresser until my knuckles turned white. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time. The naive girl who died in that hospital bed was gone. "Tell them I'll be down in a minute," I said, my voice steady and cold as ice. I narrowed my eyes at my reflection. "I'm coming for you," I whispered to the empty room. "And this time, I won't be the one dying." My legs felt heavy as I descended the grand staircase, my hand gripping the cold marble railing. Every step was a battle between the past and the present. "Elara?" The voice made me freeze. I looked toward the dining room. My father, Robert Vance, was sitting at the head of the table, a newspaper in his hands and a half-eaten toast on his plate. He looked strong. His skin wasn't gray like it was when he died in the hospital. He was alive. Dad. I choked out. I ran the rest of the way and threw my arms around his neck, burying my face in his shoulder. He smelled of old tobacco and mint a scent I hadn't smelled in 5 years. "Whoa, easy there, princess," he laughed, patting my back awkwardly. "It's just an engagement party, not a funeral. Why the tears?" I missed you," I whispered, holding him tighter. "You have no idea how much I missed you. I won't let them kill you this time." "You saw me last night," he chuckled, pulling away to look at me. Are you nervous about tonight? A little, I lied, wiping my eyes. Elara. A smooth, cheerful voice cut through the moment. My blood turned to ice. I stiffened, forcing a smile onto my face before I turned around. Adrian walked in, looking every bit the perfect fiancé in a tailored navy suit. He held a large bouquet of red roses. In my past life, I would have swooned. Now, all I saw was the man who watched me die. Hey, beautiful, Adrian said, walking over to kiss my cheek. I flinched slightly, but let his lips graze my skin. It took every ounce of my willpower not to slap him. Hi, Adrian, I said, my voice sounding distant, even to my own ears. These are for you, he said, handing me the flowers. He didn't wait for a thank you. He turned immediately to my father. Good morning, Robert. Big day for the Vance and Thorne families. Indeed, my father nodded. Grab a coffee, son. Adrian sat down, but his eyes were darting around nervously. I knew that look. He wanted something. Actually, Elara, Adrian said, turning his charm back to me. I hate to bring up business on such a romantic day, but did you get a chance to authorize that transfer? The investors for my startup are pushing for the capital injection by noon. There it was, $5 million. In my previous life, I transferred it without blinking, thinking I was supporting his dreams. He used that money to buy the poison that killed me. The $5 million? I asked, sitting across from him. Yes, just a formality. He smiled, sliding a document across the table. I just need your signature here and the finance team will handle the rest. My father watched us, sipping his coffee. He never interfered in my personal finances. He trusted my judgment. That had been his mistake. I looked at the pen Adrian was offering me. I didn't take it. I can't sign this today, Adrian, I said calmly. The smile on his face faltered. What? Why not? You said last week you believed in my vision. I do, I lied smoothly. But $5 million is a significant amount of company assets. I need to review the business proposal and the risk assessment files first. Risk assessment? Adrian laughed nervously. Elara, it's me. You don't need to do due diligence on your future husband. I'm not investing as your wife, I said, locking eyes with him. I'm investing as the heiress of the Vance Group. My father taught me to be thorough. Right, Dad? She's right, Adrian, my father chimed in, looking impressed. Business is business. Let her see the files. Adrian's jaw tightened. He was furious, but he couldn't show it in front of my father. Of course, he said, his voice strained. I'll send them over tomorrow. Great. I stood up. I need to get ready. I walked out of the dining room, leaving Adrian fuming. As I entered the hallway, I saw a young woman organizing files on a side table. She wore thick glasses and an ill-fitting suit. Sarah, in my last life, she was just an intern. I had ignored her. But she was the only one who had tried to show me proof of Adrian's affair, and I had fired her for it. You, I said, stopping in front of her. Sarah jumped, dropping a file. I'm sorry, Miss Vance. I was just, what's your name? I asked. Sarah, miss. I'm the junior assistant. Not anymore, I said. Come with me to my office. You're my personal executive assistant now. Me? She blinked, confused. Yes, I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. And your first job is to watch Adrian Thorne. I want to know everything he does. Can you do that? Sarah looked at me, fear in her eyes, but then she nodded slowly. Yes, Miss Vance. Good, I whispered. The game has begun. The spotlight was blinding, cutting through the darkness of the ballroom. I stood at the podium, the microphone cold under my gripping fingers. Hundreds of faces stared up at the investors, family friends, and business rivals. To my right, Adrian stood with a glass of champagne, looking smug. He expected the speech I gave in my last life, a speech where I declared him the co-owner of my heart and my assets. Good evening, everyone, I began, my voice amplified across the silent room. Thank you for celebrating this union. Adrian stepped forward slightly, ready to bask in the applause. However, I continued, my tone sharpening. Marriage is a partnership, but the Vance Group is a legacy. In the past, we have been too lenient with our external collaborations. I saw Adrian's smile falter. Therefore, effective tomorrow, I'm instituting the Vance Integrity Protocol, I announced clearly. Every company associated with us, including my fiance's Thorne Enterprises, will undergo a rigorous, third-party forensic audit to ensure financial stability. We will cut off any dead weight. The room went dead silent. A pin drop would have sounded like a gunshot. To the future, I said, raising my glass with a steel-hard smile. The applause was polite but confused. I stepped off the stage and Adrian was on me instantly, gripping my elbow hard enough to bruise. What the hell was that? He hissed, his face flushed with panic. A forensic audit? My investors are in that room, Elara. You made it sound like you don't trust me. I'm protecting the company, Adrian, I said, pulling my arm free. If your books are clean, you have nothing to worry about, unless... There's something you're hiding? Of course not. He snapped too quickly. Then smile, I whispered, patting his cheek. People are watching. Lila appeared at his side, her eyes narrowing at me. That was a bit harsh, Elara. You know how hard Adrian works. I do, I replied dryly. That's why I want to make sure his hard work is documented properly. Enjoy the party. I turned on my heel and walked away before they could argue further. I needed air. I slipped out through the French doors onto the large stone balcony. The night air was crisp. I wasn't alone. Leaning against the stone railing, smoking a cigarette, was a man in a black tuxedo. He didn't turn when I approached. Julian Graves, the billionaire recluse. In my past life, I was terrified of him. Quite a show in there, he said, his voice deep and rough. He still didn't look at me. I've never seen a woman gut her fiancé on stage with a smile before. I didn't gut him, I said, moving to stand beside him. I just turned on the lights. Some people prefer the dark. Julian finally turned. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and dangerous. And what do you prefer, Miss Vance? Control, I answered simply. He chuckled, a dry sound. Control is an illusion. The market eats everyone eventually. Not if you know what's coming, I said. I took a step closer to him. This was the moment. I knew something from the future that could make him a fortune and make me valuable. Mr. Graves, I lowered my voice. You're holding a significant position in Apex Logistics, aren't you? His eyes narrowed. That's private information. Sell it, I said. Tonight. Why? He looked at me with genuine curiosity now. They're projecting record profits. On Tuesday morning, their CEO will be arrested for a massive offshore tax evasion scandal, I stated, locking eyes with him. The stock will plummet by 40% before the opening bell rings. Julian stared at me for a long moment, searching for a lie. He found none. That's a very specific prediction, he said softly. It's not a prediction, I replied, extending my hand. It's a fact. Call it an engagement gift. He looked at my hand, then back at my face. A slow, intrigued smirk touched his lips. He crushed his cigarette under his heel and shook my hand. His grip was firm and warm. If you're wrong, I'll ruin you, he said. And if I'm right? I challenged. Then we have a lot to talk about. I look forward to it, Julian, I said. I released his hand and walked back toward the party, my heart pounding. I had just danced with the devil, and for the first time I was leading. I burst through the heavy oak doors of my father's study, my breath catching in my throat. The scene before me was a nightmare I had lived once before. Just a little pinch, Robert, Dr. Reese cooed, his voice dripping with false concern. He held a syringe filled with a clear liquid, hovering inches from my father's exposed arm. Stop, I shouted, the word tearing from my chest. Dr. Reese flinched, pulling the needle back. Elara? Good heavens, you startled me. What is that? I demanded, marching across the room. My eyes were locked on the deadly liquid. Just his daily vitamin cocktail, Reese smiled, though his eyes remained cold. To keep his energy up after the excitement of the engagement party. Vitamins, that's what they called it. In my past life, my father's heart stopped 2 weeks after starting these treatments. I want to see the label, I said, reaching out. Elara, don't be rude, my father chided gently, though he looked exhausted. Dr. Reese has been treating me for years. Let the man work. Exactly, I said, stepping between the doctor and the chair. And you look paler than ever, Dad? I feigned a stumble, catching my foot on the edge of the Persian rug. I lunged forward, my hand sweeping violently across the silver medical tray. Crash! The glass vial shattered against the hardwood floor. The syringe flew from Iris's hand, snapping the needle. The clear liquid seeped into the wood, pungent and chemical. My dear! My father exclaimed, sitting up straighter. Oh, how clumsy of me, I said, straightening my dress. I looked at Reese. He wasn't concerned about the mess. He looked terrified. That was a very complex compound. Ari stammered, sweat instantly beading on his forehead. I'll have to go back to the clinic to mix another batch. No need, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous chill. Actually, looking at him now, Dad, your skin is gray. I want a full toxicology screen and blood panel done immediately. That's absurd, Ari snapped, his voice pitching up. He's just tired. Unnecessary needles will only stress his heart. He needs rest, not a witch hunt. If it's just vitamins, why are you sweating, doctor? I challenged, stepping into his personal space. I resent your tone, Miss Vance. And I resent your incompetence, I shot back. You're fired. Get out of my house, Robert, surely you won't let her. Aris turned to my father. Go, I commanded, pointing to the door with a shaking finger. Before I call security and have you dragged out. Aris grabbed his bag, his eyes darting between us, and fled without another word. Elara, was that necessary? My father sighed, rubbing his temples. He's a professional. Yes, it was. 30 minutes later, the private medical team I had hired specialists loyal only to my paycheck arrived. I waited in the hallway as the lead physician, Dr. Evans, approached me with a grim look on his face. Miss Vance, he whispered, glancing at the closed door. We ran the rapid panel. We found traces of digitalis in his system, a dangerously high dose. My stomach turned. And if he had taken that injection? It would have mimicked a massive cardiac arrest, Evans confirmed. He wouldn't have survived the night. I nodded, a cold, hard fury settling in my chest. Flush his system, keep him stable. And this stays between us. I walked back into the study. My father looked up, alive but fragile. Well, he asked, did I pass? You're okay, Dad, I lied softly, sitting beside him and taking his hand. I couldn't tell him his best friend's doctor tried to murder him. Not yet, but from now on you don't take food, drink, or medicine from anyone but me or Dr. Evans. Promise me. He looked at the desperation in my eyes, sensing the gravity of my fear. He squeezed my hand. I promise, Elara. I had won this round, I had saved him. But I knew Lila wouldn't stop here. Elara, you look absolutely exhausted, Lila said, her voice dripping with that sickeningly sweet concern she had perfected over the years. She placed a latte on my desk, right next to the thick red folder labeled Confidential. Project Alpha. I am, I sighed, rubbing my temples theatrically. The board is breathing down my neck. If the prototype for the new turbine engine doesn't pass the stress test next month, the stock is going to tank. Lila's eyes flickered toward the red folder for a split second before returning to my face. Is that the final design? Yes, I tapped the cover. It's the only physical copy. The digital files are encrypted on the main server. I have to memorize the specs before the meeting with the engineers tomorrow. You work too hard, she cooed, walking around the desk to massage my shoulders. You should take 5 minutes. Go splash some cold water on your face. I'll guard the fort. In my past life, I would have been grateful. I would have thought, what a supportive sister. Now I felt her cold fingers on my neck and thought of a snake coiling before a strike. You're right, I said, standing up and feigning a stumble. I just need a moment, don't let anyone in, okay? This data is worth billions. I promise, she smiled. Go. I walked out of the office, closing the heavy glass door behind me. I didn't go to the restroom. Instead, I ducked into the empty conference room next door and pulled out my phone. I opened the app connected to the pinhole camera I had installed in a plant on my bookshelf that morning. On the small screen, the image was crystal clear. The moment the door clicked shut, Lila's demeanor changed. The sweet smile vanished, replaced by a look of focused greed. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed the red folder, flipped it open, and pulled out her own phone. Snap, flip, snap, flip. Got you, I whispered, watching her photograph every single page of the blueprints. She was fast. She knew exactly what Marcus Kane, our rival, needed. She was stealing the dimensions, the alloy compositions, and the stress tolerances. What she didn't know was that I had spent the entire night redrawing those blueprints. I hadn't just changed a few numbers. I had fundamentally sabotaged the physics of the design. I shifted the load-bearing pivot point by 3 millimeters. It looked correct on paper, but if anyone tried to build it, the machine would tear itself apart the moment it reached high velocity. Lila closed the folder, placed it back exactly where it was, and sat down in the guest chair, scrolling through her phone as if checking Instagram. I waited 2 minutes, then flushed the toilet in the hallway bathroom for sound effect and walked back in. Feeling better? she asked, looking up with bright, innocent eyes. Much better, I smiled. Thanks for watching the door, Lila. Anything for you, sis, she chirped. Well, I should run. Adrian is waiting for me for lunch. Tell him I said hello, I replied. As soon as she left, I saved the video footage and emailed the file to a secure server. An hour later, Mr. Henderson sat across from me in my office. He was a man of stone gray hair, gray suit, and a face that hadn't smiled since the 90s. He was the company's legal pit bull. You wanted to see me, Miss Vance? He asked, checking his watch. I have a deposition in 20 minutes. This is more important, I said, turning my laptop toward him. Watch, I played the footage. Henderson watched in silence, his jaw tightening with every page Lila photographed. By the time the video ended, his face was red with suppressed rage. That is corporate espionage, he growled, slamming his hand on the desk. She is stealing proprietary secrets. We need to call the police immediately. We can have her arrested before she leaves the building. No, I said calmly, closing the laptop. No? Henderson looked at me as if I were insane. Miss Vance, this is a felony. She is selling us out to a competitor. If those designs get out, those designs are fake, Mr. Henderson, I interrupted. He froze. Excuse me? I altered the schematics, I explained, leaning back in my chair. If she sells them, and she will, whoever buys them will waste millions building a prototype that will explode on the launch. Pad. Henderson stared at me for a long moment, blinking slowly. Then a rare, terrifying glint of respect appeared in his eyes. You baited her. I did. So what do you want me to do? He asked, his voice lower, more conspiratorial. Draft the lawsuit, I commanded. Prepare the evidence for a fraud case, breach of fiduciary duty, and theft of trade secrets. But do not file it yet. When? When the rival product fails, I said coldly. I want them to spend every penny they have building that failure. When they crash, we sue them for theft. We will bury them under the rubble of their own incompetence. Henderson stood up, smoothing his tie. You are your father's daughter, Elara, perhaps even more dangerous. Keep the video safe, Mr. Henderson, I said. We'll need it for the finale. Turn the volume up, Adrian demanded, leaning back in the leather chair in my office as if he owned it. He swirled his scotch, his eyes glued to the large flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. This is going to be the end of Vance Group's dominance. Elara, Marcus Kane has really outdone himself this time. I sat on the edge of my desk, keeping my face perfectly neutral. Lila sat on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, hiding a smirk behind her manicured hand. We'll see, I said softly. On the screen, Marcus Kane stood on a glittering stage, bathed in blue light. The press flashed cameras like lightning. Ladies and gentlemen, Kane boomed into the microphone, his voice dripping with arrogance. Today, Kane Industries unveils the K-10 turbine. A marvel of engineering that renders all competitors obsolete. He gestured to the massive curtain behind him. It dropped to reveal a sleek metallic engine. It looked exactly like Project Alpha, or rather it looked exactly like the drawings Lila had stolen. It's beautiful, Lila whispered, looking at me. Don't you think, Elara? It looks surprisingly familiar. It does have a certain style, I agreed, checking my watch. 3, 2, 1. Initiate the test run. Kane shouted, pressing a large red button. The turbine roared to life. The hum was smooth for exactly 5 seconds. Then a high-pitched screech tore through the speakers. Screech? What is that? Adrian sat up, spilling his drink. On screen, the turbine began to shake violently. The casing warped. A bolt flew off, shattering a nearby camera lens. Then, with a deafening crack, the central rotor sheared off, smashing through the protective glass and sending the front row of reporters scrambling for cover. Smoke poured from the machine. Cut the feed! Cut the feed! Kane screamed, his face pale with horror, before the screen went black. Silence filled my office. My God, Lila gasped, her face draining of color. It exploded. Physics is unforgiving, I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. If the pivot point is off by even 3 millimeters, the centrifugal force becomes a bomb. Shame he didn't check his math. I walked out the door, leaving them stunned. An hour later, I stood at my own podium in the lobby of the Vance building. The reporters, hungry for a story after the Kane disaster, were packed and tight. Earlier today, you saw what happens when corners are cut. I spoke into the microphones, my voice steady and commanding. At Vance Group, we don't rush. "We perfect." I signaled Sarah, who unveiled the real Project Alpha behind me. It hummed to life, silent, stable, and flawless. "This is the future," I said, looking directly into the camera lens. I knew Adrian was watching. Integrity always wins. As I walked off stage, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A single text from an unknown number. "Well played, Julian." I smiled, but the victory lap was short-lived. When I returned to my office, the door flew open. Adrian stormed in, his face purple with rage. He slammed the door behind him. "You set him up," he shouted, pointing a finger in my face. You knew Kane had the wrong designs." "Lower your voice," I said calmly, sitting behind my desk and opening a file. "Don't play dumb with me, Elara." He slammed his hands on my desk. "That failure just cost Kane Industries $50 million. And the people who invested in him lost everything." "Why do you care so much about Kane's investors, Adrian?" I asked, looking up slowly. "Unless you were one of them?" He froze, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. "And regarding the designs," I continued, my voice turning icy, "how would I know Kane had the wrong designs? The only way I would know that is if I knew someone stole them from my office. Are you telling me you know something about a theft, Adrian?" He swallowed hard, backing away. He was trapped. If he admitted he knew about the fake plans, he admitted to the crime. I just meant," he stammered. "You didn't tell me you had a second set of blueprints?" "We're supposed to be partners." "Partners share the burden, Adrian," I said, picking up my pen. "But you aren't a partner. You aren't on the board. You're just my fiancé. And right now, you're trespassing in a secure workspace." "You've changed," he whispered, looking at me with genuine fear for the first time. "No," I replied, signing a document without looking up. "I just woke up. I simply cannot believe the audacity of that decorator," Mrs. Thorne huffed, slamming her expensive alligator skin handbag onto my desk. "He said the marble flooring I chose for the foyer is backordered. Elara, you need to call him. Tell him who you are." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the woman who would have been my mother-in-law. In my past life, I'd spent millions trying to please her, buying her affection with jewelry and real estate. She'd taken it all, only to mock me at my funeral. "I'm afraid I can't do that, Mrs. Thorne," I said calmly. "And why not?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing. "It is the Lakeview estate. It's my wedding gift. You promised to take care of the down payment and the renovations." "Mom, please," Adrian muttered from the sofa. He looked terrible. His skin was pale and dark circles bruised his eyes. The Kane disaster had ruined his reputation and his own company was bleeding money. "Elara has a lot on her mind." "Nonsense," Mrs. Thorne snapped. "She is a Vance. Money is not an issue. Elara, write the check for the mansion today. Adrian needs a win and a new house will settle his nerves." I looked at the checkbook sitting on my desk. Then I looked at her. A bubble of laughter rose in my chest, escaping before I could stop it. "You're laughing?" Mrs. Thorne gasped, clutching her pearls. "I am asking for security for your future husband, and you are laughing?" "I'm laughing because you think you're getting a house," I said, standing up. "There will be no mansion. There will be no renovations. And frankly, Mrs. Thorne, I don't care about your foyer." "Elara," Adrian jumped up, panic flashing in his eyes. "Don't talk to her like that. Look, I know things are tense, but we're a team. Just send the check and we can put all this stress behind us." "You want to talk about stress?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Let's talk about it properly." "In the boardroom, 10 minutes. The boardroom?" Adrian stammered. "Why?" "Because we need to discuss the future of our merger," I lied. "Go, the board is waiting." Adrian's face lit up with pathetic hope. He thought I was finally going to bail him out. He grabbed his mother's arm and hurried out. 10 minutes later, I stood at the head of the long mahogany table. The entire board of directors was present. Adrian sat near the front, trying to look confident, while Mrs. Thorne sat in the corner, looking annoyed that she had to wait. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," I began. "As you know, Vance Group values transparency. We also value loyalty." "Hear, hear," a board member muttered. "We have been considering a deeper integration with Thorne Enterprises," I continued, pacing slowly. "But before we proceed, I had my assistant, Sarah, compile a due diligence report." Adrian smiled at me. "I'm sure you found everything in order, Elara." "I found a lot of things, Adrian," I said. "Sarah, the lights." The room darkened. The projector hummed to life. A massive photo appeared on the screen. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a high-definition photograph of Adrian and Lila kissing in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton. The room erupted in gasps. "What is this?" Mrs. Thorne shrieked. "Next slide," I commanded. Another photo. Adrian and Lila entering a hotel room. Another. Them laughing over a romantic dinner paid for with my credit card. This is fake." Adrian shouted, jumping to his feet, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. "It's Photoshop. She's crazy." "Sit down, Mr. Thorne," Mr. Henderson, our lawyer, barked from the side. "It's not just infidelity," I said, my voice cutting through the noise. "Sarah, pull up the financials." The screen changed to a bank statement. 3 months ago, I gave Adrian Thorne access to a small subsidiary account for wedding preparations. I explained to the board. As you can see, $200,000 was withdrawn. It wasn't spent on flowers or catering. It was wired directly to an offshore gambling account in Lila Cross's name. Embezzlement. A board member whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. No, that was a loan." Adrian pleaded, looking around the room frantically. "Elara, baby, please, let's talk about this in private." "There is nothing private about stealing from my company," I stated coldly. "I am officially calling off the engagement. And I am motioning for a permanent ban of Adrian Thorne and his associates from all Vance Group properties." "Seconded," Mr. Henderson said instantly. "All in favor?" I asked. Every hand in the room went up. "Security," I called out. 2 massive guards stepped forward. They grabbed Adrian by the arms. "No, you can't do this," Mrs. Thorne screamed, rushing forward. "We are family." "Not anymore," I said. Adrian's legs gave out. He went limp in the guard's grip, tears streaming down his face. "Elara, please, I have nothing else." "Kane ruined me. If you leave me, I'm dead. I love you." I walked up to him, looking down into his weeping eyes. I searched for any shred of the love I once felt. I found only disgust. "You don't love me, Adrian," I said softly, so only he could hear. "You loved my money. And now you have never. Get him out of my sight," I ordered the guards. As they dragged him screaming out the double doors, with his mother wailing behind him, I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't heartbreak. It was the first deep breath I had taken since I woke up. I turned back to the stunned board members and smoothed my blazer. "Now," I said, picking up my laser pointer, "let's discuss the quarterly earnings." "Look at her," I muttered, pacing the floor of my office. On the wall-mounted screen, Lila sat on a beige sofa, clutching a tissue. The talk show host leaned in with sympathetic eyes. "He broke his arm?" the host asked gently. "Yes," Lila sobbed, though I knew her eyes were dry. Adrian tried to stop Elara from hurting herself. She was manic. She pushed him down the stairs. And now she's using her money to silence us. "We have nothing left." "Unbelievable," Sarah hissed, slamming her tablet onto my desk. "The comments are brutal, Miss Vance. People are calling you a tyrant, a rich bully. The hashtag justice for Lila is trending. She knows how to play the victim," I said, feeling a headache throb behind my eyes. "In my last life, she cried at my funeral while wearing my jewelry. The public loves a tragedy, and she's giving them a masterpiece. What do we do?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "The PR team is overwhelmed. If this continues, the board might call for a vote of no confidence." "I need air," I said, grabbing my coat. "Cancel my afternoon meetings." I can't listen to her voice for another second. The restaurant was dimly lit, a sanctuary of silence amidst the chaos of the city. Julian sat across from me in the private booth, swirling a glass of deep red wine. He looked unbothered, as if the world outside didn't exist. "You look like you're ready to scream," Julian observed calmly, sliding a menu toward me. "Have you seen the news?" I asked, ignoring the menu. "She's destroying my character, Julian. She's accusing me of assault, domestic abuse. I'm losing the court of public opinion." "Opinion is wind," Julian replied, taking a slow sip. "It changes direction every hour." "It's not just wind when it affects my stock price," I snapped, gripping the edge of the table. "I need to go on TV. I need to deny it. I need to explain that Adrian is a liar and Lila is a thief." "You need to be quiet," he interrupted, his voice low but commanding. I froze. "Excuse me?" "Power isn't about shouting, Elara. It's about silence," he said, leaning forward. The candlelight danced in his dark eyes. When you argue with a liar, you just give their lie more oxygen. You don't fight a fire by fanning it. You smother it. And how do I do that? I whispered, feeling the exhaustion settle into my bones. She's my sister. People trust her because of the family name. Julian reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thin, yellowed file. He placed it on the crisp white tablecloth between us. That's the thing, Julian said, a small, dangerous smile playing on his lips. She isn't, I frowned, reaching for the file. What do you mean? Open it, I flipped the cover. Inside were copies of old adoption records from 20 years ago. My father's signature was at the bottom. I've seen this, I said confused. Dad adopted her when she was 6. Look closer at the notary seal, Julian instructed. And look at the date of the stamp versus the date of the signature. I squinted. The dates didn't match. The stamp was from a year after the signature. It's a forgery, Julian stated flatly. A sloppy one likely done by a desperate lawyer back then. I had my team dig into the archives of the orphanage. Lila Cross was never legally adopted by Robert Vance. The paperwork was fake to get her residency and access to the trust fund. I stared at the paper, my hands shaking. The woman who had tormented me, who had claimed to be my blood, was nothing. She isn't my sister? I breathed out. Legally? She's a stranger, Julian said, leaning back. And technically? She's a fraud criminal who has been stealing from your family estate for 2 decades. I looked up at him, the panic in my chest dissolving into cold, hard resolve. If she's not family, I started. Then she has no claim, Julian finished. And you can destroy her without saying a single word to the press. Declined? I stared at the pharmacist, my cheeks flushing hot. That's impossible. It's a corporate black card. I'm sorry, Miss Vance, the pharmacist said, lowering his voice so the other customers wouldn't hear. The system says the account has been frozen pending a legal inquiry. I can't release your father's heart medication without payment. Hold the prescription, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed panic. I'll fix this. I marched out of the pharmacy and dialed the number I knew by heart. Victor Slate speaking, a greasy, smooth voice answered on the second ring. Victor, this is Elara, I snapped. Why are my accounts frozen? My father needs his medication. Ah, Miss Vance. He sighed theatrically. I'm afraid my hands are tied. We received a notification of a potential breach of contract regarding the Vance-Thorne merger. Under Clause 84 of your grandfather's original banking agreement, we have to freeze assets during disputes. There is no dispute. I shouted, ignoring the people staring at me on the sidewalk. The merger was cancelled. You're doing this because Adrian owes you money, aren't you? He put you up to this. Mr. Thorne is a value client, Victor said coldly. Unless you can prove liquidity of $50 million by close of business today, the freeze stays. It's just protocol. He hung up. I stood on the street corner, the phone slipping in my sweaty palm. 50 million, today. If I didn't get it, the medical equipment at the house would shut down. Dad would die. I didn't go home, I hailed a cab. Graves Tower, fast. 20 minutes later, I burst past Julian's secretary, throwing the doors to his office open. Julian was on a conference call, but he silenced it the moment he saw my face. Out, he said to the room. His executives scrambled to leave. I need money, I said, breathless, standing in front of his massive glass desk. Hello to you two, Elara, he said, leaning back. Trouble? Victor Slate froze everything, I said, my voice cracking. They're using an old loophole. If I don't show 50 million in liquid capital by 5 p.m., my father's care stops. I need a loan, Julian. I'll pay you back double, triple. Just write the check. Julian looked at me, his face unreadable. He tapped his pen on the desk. No. The room spun. No, you said we were allies. I don't lend money to desperate people, Elara, he said calmly. Loans are liabilities. They make you weak. If I give you a loan, Slate will just find another loophole tomorrow. Then what do I do? I slammed my hands on his desk. I can't let him die. Sell, Julian said. What? Sell me 10% of Vance Group, he proposed, his eyes locking onto mine. Not as a loan, as a partner. I'll wire 60 million to your personal account right now. And since I will be a major shareholder, freezing the accounts becomes an attack on my assets. I stared at him. Selling shares was risky. It gave him power over me. But looking into his dark, steady eyes, I realized he wasn't trying to trap me. He was offering me a shield. "Do it," I whispered. Julian typed on his keyboard. "Done. Check your phone." I pulled it out. The notification flashed. "Transfer received, $60 million. Now, Julian stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Let's call Victor." He put the phone on speaker. "Sleep," Victor answered, sounding smug. "Do you have the cash, Elara?" "Miss Vance is busy." Julian's deep voice rumbled through the line. "This is Julian Graves." There was a long, terrified silence on the other end. Mr. Graves?" "I am now the primary stakeholder in the Vance group," Julian said, his voice lethal. "If those accounts are unfrozen in 30 seconds, I will buy your bank, Victor. And the first thing I'll do is fire you and audit your personal finances." It was a mistake." Victor stammered, the fear palpable. "A clerical error. Unfreezing it now. Immediately, sir." The line went dead. Julian looked at me and smirked. "See? Silence is powerful." "But money is louder." I slumped into the chair, the adrenaline crushing. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," he said, walking around the desk to stand beside me. "We're partners now." "And nobody touches what's mine." Rain lashed against the tinted windows of the black SUV, blurring the city lights into streaks of neon. I sat in the back seat, rubbing my tired eyes. The clock on the dashboard read 11:45 p.m. "Frank," I said, leaning forward slightly toward my driver. "Can we take the scenic route tonight?" I need a moment before I face my father. Frank, a massive man with a shaved head whom Julian had personally assigned to me, glanced in the rearview mirror. His eyes were tight, focused on something behind us. "I don't think that's a good idea, Miss Vance," Frank said, his voice unusually tense. "In fact, I need you to put your head down, now." "What? Why?" I asked, freezing. "Because the sedan behind us has been tailing us since the parking garage." And he just cut his lights. Before I could process his words, a violent thud shook the entire car. "Ah!" I screamed, grabbing the handle above the door as my phone flew off the seat. "Hold on," Frank shouted, gripping the wheel with white knuckles. He slammed on the gas, the engine roaring as we shot forward on the slick highway. I risked a glance out the back window. A dark car was surging forward again, its engine whining high and desperate. The streetlights flashed over the windshield, illuminating the driver for a split second. His face was twisted in a rictus of pure madness. His eyes were wild, teeth bared. "It's Adrian," I gasped, the blood draining from my face. "Frank, it's Adrian. He's driving." "He's trying to run us off the road," Frank growled, spinning the wheel sharply to the left to avoid another collision. "He's not trying to pass. He's trying to kill us. Can we lose him?" I cried. "Not on this straightaway. He's lighter than us." "He's going to ram the side. Do whatever you have to do." I yelled. Suddenly, Adrian's car surged up on our right side. He wasn't looking at the road. He was looking at me through the glass, mouthing words I couldn't hear but understood perfectly. "You die." He jerked his steering wheel to the left, slamming his metal fender into my door. Crunch. The SUV shuddered, tires screeching against the wet asphalt. Sparks flew past my window like fireworks. "That's enough," Frank said calmly. Frank didn't pull away. Instead, he waited for Adrian to pull back for another strike. The moment Adrian lunged, Frank slammed the brakes. Adrian's car shot past us, missing his target. He overcorrected, jerking the wheel wildly on the wet road. "Watch out!" I screamed. It happened in slow motion. Adrian's car spun out of control, hydroplaning across 3 lanes. It smashed into the concrete guardrail with a sickening crunch of metal and glass. The car flipped once, landing upside down in a cloud of steam and smoke. Frank brought our SUV to a screeching halt 50 yards away. "Miss Vance, stay here," Frank ordered, unbuckling his seatbelt. "I need to secure the perimeter." "No," I said, opening my door. My legs were shaking, but my mind was clear. "I need to see him." "It's dangerous, miss." "He's trapped, Frank. He isn't hurting anyone anymore." I stepped out into the rain. The cold water soaked my blouse instantly, but I didn't feel it. I walked toward the wreckage. The smell of gasoline and burnt rubber filled the air. Adrian was hanging upside down in the driver's seat, held in by his seatbelt. His face was covered in blood and his arm was twisted at an unnatural angle. He groaned, his eyes fluttering open as I approached. "Elara," he wheezed, coughing up blood. I stood just outside the shattered window, looking down at him. "You missed." Help me, he begged, tears mixing with the blood on his face. Please, I can't feel my legs. Get me out. It's going to burn. It might, I said, my voice devoid of emotion. You were willing to let me burn in that car. I was angry, he sobbed. I didn't mean it. Please, Elara, we were in love once. Don't let me die here. I crouched down so our eyes were level. I know what this feels like, Adrian, I whispered. The cold, the fading light. The fear, I felt all of this when I lay in that hospital bed while you laughed. What are you talking about? He choked out, confusion clouding his pain. You don't remember, I said softly. But I do. I stood up and pulled my phone from my pocket. I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? The operator asked. There has been a car accident on the East Highway, I said calmly, staring at Adrian. One male trapped, critical condition, send an ambulance. I hung up. You called them? Adrian gasped, hope flickering in his eyes. You're saving me? Yes, I said, turning my back on him. Because death is too easy for you, Adrian. I want you to live. I want you to sit in a prison cell for 20 years and think about the woman you threw away. Elara, don't leave me. He screamed as the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance. I walked back to the SUV where Frank was waiting. I didn't look back. Let's go home, Frank, I said, closing the door. It's finally over. State your full name for the record, the prosecutor said, adjusting his glasses. Elara Vance, I replied, my voice steady and clear. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled with reporters, former employees, and curious onlookers. To my left, at the defense table, Adrian sat in a wheelchair, his arms still in a cast from the crash. Lila sat beside him, looking pale, gaunt, and small. They refused to look at me. Miss Vance, please tell the jury what happened on the night of October 24th, Mr. Stone, the district attorney, requested. I was returning home from work, I said, looking directly at the jury. Adrian Thorne followed my vehicle. He rammed my car 3 times at high speed. He looked me in the eye before he tried to push my car into the concrete barrier. Objection. Adrian's lawyer stood up, his face red. Speculation on intent. My client lost control of his vehicle due to the rain. Overruled, the judge said, peering over his spectacles. The witness is describing her perception. Continue, Miss Vance. He didn't lose control, I said coldly. He wanted me dead. Just like he wanted my money. And regarding the defendant, Miss Cross? Mr. Stone asked, turning toward the other table. What was her role in this? She provided the motive and the means, I said, pointing to the evidence screen where the bank transfers were displayed. She embezzled $200,000 from the Vance Group to fund their escape, and she did it using a false identity. The woman sitting there is not my sister. She's a fraud who forged adoption papers 20 years ago to steal my inheritance. That's a lie. Lila shrieked, jumping to her feet. Her lawyer tried to pull her down, but she shoved him away with surprising strength. You always hated me. She screamed, her face contorted with ugly, twisted rage. You were supposed to be the stupid one, Elara. You were supposed to just sign the papers and die. Why didn't you just die? The entire courtroom gasped. The silence was shattered. Order in the court. The judge bellowed, slamming his gavel repeatedly. Bailiff, restrain the defendant. 2 officers grabbed Lila as she kicked and screamed, looking like a wild animal trapped in a corner. I didn't flinch. I just watched her unravel. She had just proved my case better than any document ever could. 3 hours later, the jury returned. The foreman stood up, clutching a piece of paper. Has the jury reached a verdict? The judge asked. We have, Your Honor, the foreman said. Guilty on all counts. Adrian lowered his head into his hands. Lila began to sob quietly, her earlier rage replaced by defeat. Adrian Thorne, the judge said, his voice echoing off the wood paneling. For attempted murder and corporate embezzlement, I sentence you to 25 years in federal prison. Adrian flinched as if he'd been physically slapped. Lila Cross, the judge continued. For fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy, you are sentenced to 15 years. The gavel banged. Bang. The sound of justice. Take them away, the judge ordered. As the officers pulled Adrian up, he stopped. He forced his body to turn toward me. There was no anger left in his eyes, only a hollow, crushing regret. He looked at Lila, who was a sobbing mess, and then back at me, standing tall, powerful, and untouched. He realized then that he had traded a diamond for a stone. He had thrown away a queen to play games with a pawn. "Elara?" he mouthed, a silent plea for forgiveness that would never come. I didn't blink, I didn't smile. I simply turned my back on him. I walked down the center aisle, the heels of my shoes clicking rhythmically against the floor. The heavy oak doors opened before me, revealing the bright afternoon light. I stepped out onto the courthouse steps. The air was crisp and fresh. The sun was warm against my skin, banishing the cold chill that had lived in my bones for so long. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs. The ghost of my past life was finally dead. The heavy weight I had carried since the moment I opened my eyes in that hospital bed had vanished. I was finally free. "Elara, are you even listening to me?" My father's voice crackled through the speakerphone. "I am, Dad," I laughed, tracing the rim of my coffee cup. "You caught a marlin, a big one. The biggest in the marina." He boasted. "I'm telling you, honey, this retirement business is the best decision I ever made. Dr. Evans says my blood pressure is down to that of a 30-year-old. No stress, no board meetings, just ocean." My chest tightened with relief. In another life, he was already 6 feet under. Now he was living his best life. "I'm glad, Dad," I said softly. "You deserve it." "And you?" he asked, his tone turning serious. "Are you taking a break? I saw the news." "You finally bought out Kane Industries." "I did," I said, looking out the floor-to-ceiling window at the city skyline. "Signed the papers an hour ago. We are officially the largest conglomerate in the country. My girl," he sighed proudly. "The queen of the city. I'll visit soon, Dad, promise." I hung up and placed the phone on my mahogany desk. Silence filled the room, but it wasn't the lonely silence of my past. It was the silence of victory. The heavy double doors clicked open. No knock. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. "You're late," I said, still looking out at the view. "I was busy ensuring your stock price hit an all-time high," Julian's deep voice rumbled. I turned. He was leaning against the doorframe, looking impossibly handsome in a charcoal suit. He walked toward me, his stride confident. "Up 4 points?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. 5, he corrected, stopping right in front of me. "The market loves a winner, Elara, and right now you're untouchable." "We're untouchable," I corrected him. He smiled, a rare, genuine expression that reached his dark eyes. "We are." So I crossed my arms, leaning back against my desk. "Did you come here just to deliver the stock report?" "You could have emailed that." "I could have," he agreed. "But I can't email this." He reached into his jacket pocket. My heart skipped a beat. He pulled out a small black velvet box. He didn't drop to one knee. That wasn't us. We didn't do fairy tales. We did partnerships. He held it out to me like an offering. "Julian?" I whispered. "Last year, I invested in a company because I saw potential," he said, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. "But over the last 12 months, I realized I don't just want the company. I want the CEO." I stared at the ring inside. It was a flawless emerald-cut diamond, sharp and clear. "Is this a business proposal?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "It's a life proposal," he said, taking my hand. "No contracts, no exit clauses, just us. I want to wake up next to you every day, Elara. I want to build this empire with you, not just next to you." I looked at him. I thought of Adrian, who had wanted to dim my light. Julian wanted me to burn brighter. "I'm not an easy woman to love, Julian," I warned him. "Good," he smirked. "I don't like easy." I laughed, a sound of pure joy. I took the ring and slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. "Then yes," I said. "I accept." He pulled me in, kissing me with a passion that made the rest of the world fade away. I looked over his shoulder at the city below. I had been reborn to save my life, but standing here in the arms of a man who respected my power, I realized I had done so much more. I had taken back the whole world.